Hey everyone, Chris with the Beyond Business podcast. I have my co-host Justin today and our SEO director Joseph Jones for an actually interesting conversation about SEO. I know this can be super ethereal and hard to grasp, but Joseph does a great job breaking it down, especially with the analogy of an apple orchard. So excited for you to listen. I think there's lots of pieces of value in here, and I think Joseph does a great job explaining it for anybody across the spectrum, and hopefully it'll bring you value. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beyond Business podcast. Super excited for another conversation today. This is Chris Rothenbury, your main host, and today I have the pleasure of Justin Thompson, our marketing director, joining us to kind of assist me and join the conversation. And then obviously super excited for our guest today. We have Joseph Jones with us. He is our SEO director here at Beyond Blue Media, and we're super excited to dive in and pick his brain about not just SEO, but a lot of other aspects of marketing and business. So Joseph, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bright and early. Hopefully you're awake.
It took definitely a couple of energy drinks to get me here.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Here we are. You know, it's freezing outside.
Yep.
And as a Californian, that's just not something I'm used to at all. And I don't think I ever will be.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into those details. Don't worry. We have plenty of questions around the California side.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Justin, any little shout outs you want to give before we get started?
No, excited for this, and welcome, Joseph.
Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, Joseph, would love to start with a brief background of who you are, you know, how you found Beyond Blue, just to kind of help our audience get to know you a little bit better, and then we can really dive into the meat of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from California, like I just said. So I'm used to the warm weather. So from the Sacramento area, so that's a little bit more of the central-ish, if you want to call that, of California. And basically grew up homeschooled, so that was fun. And all my classmates were my two older siblings and my younger sibling. And so it was a really heavy competition growing up, for me at least. They weren't in competition at all with me. So that was fun. But yeah, just tried powering through school and got into college when I was about 17. So that was fun. And then I got a Bachelor of Science degree in internet marketing specifically. And then went on to work at gyms and try to develop some managerial skills over there, meet some people, which was good because that got me on the health kick. So that was a good time getting started there. So I had got to start somewhere. Yep. And afterwards, I ended up getting into helping run the marketing side of things for a local nonprofit, which was one at a time. And after that, I got kind of sucked in to the digital marketing atmosphere. And from there, I just decided, you know what, I think I can take my skills a little bit higher, you know? And that's when I started looking at Colorado, and that's how I found Beyond Blue Media is on Indeed. So there you go.
Wow. There you go, a little free marketing shout out to Indeed.
Yes. Indeed works.
That's right.
That's how it got me here.
Yeah, that was great. And obviously, yeah, I think there's a lot to touch on in there. I think to start, I obviously are our SEO director, so would love to dive into that for a little bit and start picking your thoughts and different things to unpack there. Can we set some ground rules first for SEO?
Yeah.
It's one of those buzzwords that I think gets a lot of people confused. And understandably, you would probably be the first to admit that it's a lifetime of, you know, learning and becoming an expert in this and learning what Google's about because it's always changing. So it's a lifetime of knowledge. So I think to start, I'd love to avoid abbreviations as much as possible. We'll define SEO, but I do want to make sure that it's comprehensible and our listeners don't have to pause the podcast every 5 seconds to look up a term. And then secondly, I think I'd love to keep it, I mean, we can maybe go on the technical side for those that are interested, but I'd love to start and keep it simple.
Yeah.
And keep it, you know, something that we can give value for someone who has never heard of SEO before or someone who's been, you know, dealing with it or working with it for 10 years.
Sure.
Does that sound fair?
Is
that doable?
Ground rules.
Is that doable?
No, but we'll try.
We have an ongoing joke in our company that anytime Joseph has to explain SEO, that it's like him speaking a different language. So I'm very excited to see how we can start to unpack this. Yeah, I guess to start, you know, let's pretend we're talking with someone who has heard of SEO before, but it's just a buzzword and really don't know what it's about, how would you describe SEO to someone for the first time in layman's terms?
So I think let's hit a point there. SEO is SEO is search engine optimization, right? And so that means we're working with search engines online, which is basically how we get majority of our information, because it's kind of hard to find a website just going off of, like, I don't know, you go to your browser and you randomly type something in to say a .com, right? How you know it's going to land on a page that is legitimate, right? So search engines are made as kind of like, I would explain it as a library. I am one of the key librarians to be able to help you better as the client and as the user to be able to help patch through the context that you need, right? Yep. If that makes sense. So essentially, I help the person that made the book, the website, index it in the right place, in the right category, and hopefully make it to where it is one of the first books you go to when you come into the library. Right. If that makes sense. But the misconception I'm talking about here is search engine is not just Google. Google is just the one that happens to own the majority of the market share right now. So we're talking about Bing, Yandex, Yahoo, back when it was a little bit more of the kind of staple, right? And then even way back when it was like the beginnings of the internet, right? So Google wasn't the first to be the first search engine. They just knew how to do it right. So...
Can you maybe touch on what you mean by they knew how to do it right? Because obviously I think we just caught that wave of that piece of the internet getting launched. And so I remember from my childhood, the switch from an AOL or Yahoo over to Google early in my childhood, and that switch and, you know, what made Google so different. So can you touch on maybe what Google got right or touched on better as far as knowing what not only the person searching, but also the business is trying to be found and how they linked them together?
Well, Google's algorithm, it was really one of the first ones that touched base on interlinking between websites, right? And so essentially what that means is when one website links to another, that's kind of like what we consider to be an upvote in a way, because that means that, oh, this is a valuable resource and I'm a valuable resource, which means I'm kind of going to direct people over here via a link on a website. So that's kind of like taking the stance of, we think that, you know, for the user's benefit, this is all Google's about, is the user's benefit, you know, gain the best search results possible, right? Is if all these other websites are giving the thumbs up, just like if you're like trying to be a politician, you get the thumbs up from everyone and the word of mouth spreads, then you're probably going to be the top one to rank, right?
Yep.
It's kind of the exact same thing. So Google installed a whole bunch of different parts of the algorithm. There's well over, I would say there's probably over 230 different types of ranking signals, each with their own priority in the algorithm. Link building, which is what we're talking about here essentially, link building of website to website is essentially the highest priority, because it's one authority talking about another authority, and then that boosts your overall ranking.
Right. Okay. I mean, I understood it, so that's a good sign.
I didn't understand any of it. That's great. I talk to him every day. Let me jump in here real quick. So if I think there are a lot of things that you just kind of detailed there that probably need a ton more explanation.
Yes.
But from what you're talking about with SEO is why is this important for not only people to understand, but business owners to understand?
Well, SEO has to deal with organic reach, right?
Okay. So, which means,
we're getting to there.
Okay.
So organic has everything to do with, for instance, you go to Google or you go to any of your, you know, search engines that you want to use, right? There's DuckDuckGo. There's a whole bunch out there right now. And the main one is Google. So let's just say Google.
Yes.
So you go to Google and you're typing in something, I don't know, local grocery store near me.
Yeah.
Right? So we just threw a whole bunch of what we call keywords in there, right? Our seed keyword, though, so our main keyword there is grocery store, right?
Okay.
So if you're talking about a grocery store, Google's going to try to find the one nearest you.
Yeah.
And so now it's not how it was about 15, 20 years ago when this first started out. Now it's, I'm smart. Google is smart enough to understand you probably want something that's really close. So the importance of that is, well, now as an SEO or as a business owner, honestly, if you have a website, you want to be the first one there, right? Or you have a digital asset because there's a whole bunch of different properties that Google owns directly on their search engine. So that goes really far in. But essentially, if you want to be there and you want people to believe that you are the best option for them, that literally means you have to be at the top somewhere. You at least have to be on page 1, and preferably within the top 3 selections for that particular keyword, right?
Yeah.
Now, you don't want someone to be like typing in near me and then you're actually like several cities over, right? Because that doesn't really make much sense for the end user. Plus, that means that they're going to have to travel really far away. And the odds are they're not going to want to get near you.
Yeah.
So that being the case, you have to be thinking about the user in general for every single search. And so when we're tying it back to why it's important for a business owner, you're either going to be paying probably a lot of money, depending on which city you're in, right? For which keyword you want to be ranking for, depending on your industry.
Yeah.
For ads.
Yep.
Right? Which ads is incredible. Ads is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But you want to be there in the organic area because we have, if you're talking about like a return on investment for the amount of impressions that you get and also the clicks that you get from those impressions, it's about roughly, I think I read 14%. Whereas an ad is more down the lines of maybe 4%. So 100 people come through, 12 of them will most likely click, 14 will most likely click your organic search result on Google versus an ad where that would be about 4 people would click on that out of the 100.
Okay.
Right?
Now, if you're showing up in both areas, is there an advantage to that?
Yeah,
if you're running ads and SEO at the same time? Okay.
So the whole point of SEO is that it's another touch point, but it's the most organic and most trustworthy touch point. If you're ranking there above everyone else, then you probably are the most likely option for me.
Yeah.
Right. But if you have an ad running and it's really good and it's really visible and people like it, sure, they'll click on it. But what if you have an ad blocker on?
Yeah.
Then there's a problem.
Okay.
And a lot of people have that nowadays. So.
Okay. All right. 2 things, and I'll pass it back to you, Chris. So let's stick with that example of the grocery store. So obviously we are here in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Yeah.
There are a lot of grocery stores here.
Yeah.
So how does a business owner, for my first question, how is a business owner and what should they be doing or thinking about when it comes to trying to outrank the competition? And then the second piece is maybe just touch on a little bit of a brief explanation of the difference between Google Ads and SEO.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So sticking with the grocery store, what are you doing different? That's the main thing when it comes to SEO is you could be like everybody else, but not everyone else is going to do the exact same thing, right? You can be, an owner of a Walmart, right?
Yeah.
And then you can have another Walmart over here, or maybe a totally different mom and pop store, right? That is just for Fort Collins, let's say, right? But it all depends on your marketing scheme or strategy on how you're going to be able to outrank the other Walmart, right? So most people are typing in Walmart. Yeah. Walmart near me, because it's well known. It is a high prominence business. Everyone knows about it. Most likely you have it in your town really close to you within a couple miles. So that's probably going to be a go-to for a lot of people depending on what their goal is. If you want cheaper foods and you know that the produce is probably not going to be the absolute best, but it will last a little while, then you go there. However, if you're looking for organic foods, you're probably going to go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, right? And that might be a little bit more of a distance from you, because it typically is, because it's not like a McDonald's or a Walmart where it's literally on your corner. It's going to be a little further out. So that means you have to make the journey to be able to get over there. So if you are that mom and pop store, that mom and pop grocery store, what is it that you're doing different and make that unique for the intended demographic, the intended user? Because if I'm trying to find organic anything, I'm probably not going to go to Walmart. So if you have organic foods or you have cheaper foods that are organic, then you got to make that known somehow. And that's what people are going to be searching for. So in the end, it's know your user if you are going to break into that industry. Or if you have the industry already, you have the business, and then you're going to be going into marketing. Know your business model up front in order to be able to outrank everyone else.
Okay, so find what your unique ability is from your business perspective.
What's your unique selling point?
And then is it impossible for, I mean, you mentioned Walmart. So me as a business owner, I might start to think like, there's no way I can outrank Walmart, or there's no way I can like compete with these big companies. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
You can, because Google has a whole bunch of different properties. We call them Google products when it's directly on the Google platform, the Google search engine. And you don't really recognize it because it's been introduced to you all the time in recent years. Back in 2014, Google Places opened up, right? So that takes us into what's currently known as the Google Map Pack, which is where you get a list of organic results and it has a map. And it's like, okay, so now I have a whole bunch of businesses thrown in front of me. Here's Walmart, but here's the mom and pop store. Yeah. It has better reviews. It has more reviews. People like it a lot more. I can read the comments. And that's kind of what Google wanted to do, is they wanted to be able to make it to where the local business owner, small, medium, large, doesn't matter, is able to outrank based on their unique selling point.
Yeah.
Right? You just need to have a really good strategy behind that, because you're not just going to automatically rank, which is where SEO comes into play.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
I think your question was about Google Ads.
Yes, quickly.
And SEO.
Yeah, just a quick, brief explanation.
And what was the question again?
Difference between ads and SEO.
Ads is a typically pay for click or pay for impressions kind of strategy, whereas SEO is not really upfront in your face like that. You're literally just allowing the user to be able to come to you rather than you shoving yourself in their face, is essentially what that is, right? So it looks better to them and it's more trustworthy to them.
I know you love our ads manager, Matt, but I do sense the tiny little like competition of like SEO is a little bit better. We're gentle. We're not on your face. We're the good option.
Well, here's the thing. I think that there's a place for everything, right? There's a place for every strategy. Right. Like I'm going to say SEO is probably better than social media marketing for a lot of different industries and businesses, but ads is going to be so more expensive depending on what city you're in, depending on what industry you're in. Like if I'm a local plumber and I just started my business and I'm over in Denver, I can't survive a cost per click of $90 for one keyword. Yeah. So how am I supposed to hit that keyword? SEO. It's really the only other option that you have, because no one's going to be on social media looking for that, right?
Yes.
So there's a time and a place for everything, and it just depends on the industry.
Yeah, well said. And we can get it. Well, I do have a question to kind of get into the value of being on the first page, but especially in northern Colorado, you look at the roofing market, and like you said, it's not uncommon in peak roofing season to see a cost per click over $100 or $200. And so if you have someone working with a limited budget, that's very few clicks, and you're not likely to get many calls off of that. Right. Whereas if you are intentional and put in the time to get to the first page, you're quote unquote getting free clicks. You know, there's still an investment to get there.
Right.
But then you're there and you're in front of people without having to pay for their attention, which kind of ties into the question I wanted to piggyback off of Justin and something you alluded to. But I mean, let's be honest, SEO, if it's done correctly and ethically, so you don't get in trouble with Google, it takes a long time.
Yes. You
know, it's quite an investment. Again, it's an investment. It's not something that, again, if it's done correctly, you have to invest a lot into it. And because it takes so long, along the way, you may not see immediate results. So already not a great selling point, but obviously this is where people are. So for the business owners that are trying to wrap their minds around this and saying, okay, you're telling me it's an investment to get there and it takes time, why on earth wouldn't I just do something else that is immediate? You know, why would I invest in something that is going to take so long? And maybe in that answer, like I said, we can touch on the value of being on the first page once you get there and obviously increasing that ranking.
I think I actually already answered the question a little earlier.
Chris, how could
were you not listening? Yeah.
Where were you this whole time?
But to elaborate on it is the 4% versus the 14%, right? If 4 people out of 100 are going to be clicking on an ad and hopefully converting, you're paying, most likely, if you're on Google, you're going to be paying for that click.
Right.
I don't know how much that click is going to cost you. It could be $5, could be 50 cents, right? Or it could be $90 depending on which industry you're in and where you're located. But if we're talking about SEO, it's pretty much a flat rate, right? And the majority of people that are looking for particular search terms, right? As long as your SEO is smart enough to know what that search term is and what the intent of the searcher is, whether it's informational, navigational, or transactional, right? Those are the kind of the main three user intents is what we call them. Then essentially you're going to be the one that wants to have the long-term game, because how are you going to be able to sustain paying so much for a click that probably doesn't convert?
Right.
Unless you have like a really good ads campaign working for you. You can't just throw money out into the wind with ads unless you have a good strategy behind it. Just like SEO, you need to understand the user intent. And most people trust organic results over ads. No one can block an organic result. There's no such thing. It's there for a reason. It is always in your search results. Always. Never getting past that. An ad can be blocked.
Right.
I think it's as simple as that. You're always going to be visible if you're on that first page.
Right.
Joseph 1, Matt 0. But Matt's not here to defend
Yeah,
him.
Matt's
I love
here.
Matt.
Yeah,
He's
Matt will be
great.
here next week, so maybe we can give him, we'll compare.
You can
the
say
two.
how much crap SEO is.
There you
yeah.
go.
But again, it does come back to the whole thing of it's a long-term plan.
Right.
It has to be in order to be successful. Like if you're trying to plant a seed because you want a really nice big tree. Let's say you're trying to have an apple tree in your backyard. I don't know if Colorado allows for that because the weather.
They disallow it.
Yeah, because the weather sucks. But essentially, you're going to want to, water it, fertilize it if that's your goal, and you're going to want to protect that seed. You're going to want to make that seed grow and develops into a sapling. You continue to water it. You're not just going to stop, right? Because then it dies. So it needs to have love and care at all times. And you're always trying to find out, well, today, maybe it doesn't look so good. So that means today I need to put more attention into it and some more love into it, right? That's what SEO really comes down to, is the exact same thing. It's a long-term goal, but the result is beautiful. I could buy a whole bunch of apples to be able to get where I'm going, but I'm not going to have, the structure to always have apples coming in for free after I put in a whole bunch of time and effort into it. That's essentially why I love SEO.
So from this analogy, SEO is kind of planting the seed, the apple seed, letting the apple tree grow. Yeah. The ads are essentially going to the store, buying the apple for people to consume, but you have to keep buying the apple.
Exactly.
And it's not always going to be an apple. You might get oranges and grapes and other things where it's not your ideal
Are you shopping
customer.
at Walmart?
Yeah.
Is that where this is going?
Let's create a graphic out of this.
Yeah.
That's where we're going with this.
Yeah,
So,
I love that analogy. That is very well said.
Yeah.
And I think to follow up on that, the one part I wanted to maybe help as far as the specifics is if you have a business owner, whether they've been in business for less than a year or a long time, what would be your advice on whether someone needs to outsource their SEO efforts? Because we all know it takes a lot of time, especially even if you know what you're doing, it's an uphill climb and it takes a lot of effort. So what would your advice be to someone who's considering outsourcing it or not sure if they even need to? Because it is a good investment, but not everybody's always convinced to that.
And real quick, I think something to clarify in there too, as far as outsourcing, is touch on a little bit of like the difference between like the black hat marketing, the gray hat, those kind of things, as far as business owners being careful of who they're talking to, and if they're getting, because there's a lot of people out there that offer SEO services that seemingly are inexpensive, but are they doing it in the correct way? Because there are ways to try to cheat the system, which if you do it, you can maybe help yourself in the short run, but if you get flagged by Google, what's happening in those scenarios?
I do think that's a really good point, is you can do SEO very quickly. You can win very quickly, but then you are falling into the dark depths of penalization and where you don't want your website to be, where you don't want your digital assets to be, where you don't want your brand name to be. Right?
And what's the reason for Google doing those kind of things? I mean,
penalizing?
Yes.
Because the whole point is to have the best user experience.
Exactly.
If you have what we call keyword spam, where you're just throwing a whole bunch of keywords out. And this is how it used to be back around 10, 15 years ago in SEO, back before my time of actually jumping into it, is you could just keyword spam the hell out of your website, out of any digital asset, honestly, and you would rank. That's because keywords were the top priority for the longest time. And now it's back onto the whole link building, right? But keywords still matter. I don't care what anyone says. Keywords matter. I've heard a lot of people talk about this online. Does my keyword matter? Yes, your keyword matters. Why? Because that's going to help show Google what you do, what you service, what your product is, what your business is all about. It matters. What matters is not throwing it 100 times on a page that has 100 words.
Which would be spamming, right?
That's keyword spamming. And I mean, honestly, if your page is just filled with every other sentence is, marketing company Denver, marketing company Denver, marketing company Denver, it makes no sense. As a user reading that, I don't like that. Now you're just throwing a whole bunch of random stuff in my face. And I get it. You are a marketing company in Denver. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Marketing in Denver, by the way.
Yeah, we do. But we don't do it that way. You can find our page. So essentially, we, as SEOs, what we try to do is we try to help the business owner be able to white hat SEO is what we call it. The clean way, clean glove way, you could call it, right? You're not having some dirt on your finger after you do the glove test. So that's Google looking at it from there. Is Google's going to try to scrape up any dirt it can find. As SEOs that want to do it the best way, you're going to want to pay more. It's just how it is, and put more time and effort into it. So that way it comes out clean and you're on top of everyone else in the long term, right? So maybe it seems a little suffocating at first because you're spending money out for an SEO to be able to go in there, a good SEO to be able to go into your website, your digital assets, whether it's YouTube, Amazon account, doesn't matter. And they're developing it for you and you're paying a little extra. But the point is they're doing it the right way. So that way, 10 years down the line, you're still number one. Whereas if you do it what we call the black hat SEO way, which is the dirty glove, where I just scooped up a whole bunch of crap off the tabletop, right? With my white glove test. So Google doing that. That's when it's going to be like, okay, we got to clean some things up. And that's when you get removed, you get penalized, and Google does that for the end user. So when we're talking about where to go to find your SEO and why you probably should pay someone else, it does take a lot of time. We've already addressed that. But also, a business owner is not going to be able to put that time and effort in typically. Not for all digital assets. Maybe for their Google My Business listing, which is part of that whole map pack we were talking about earlier, which was originally Google Places. Maybe they can put some time and effort in there, but you want to be looking at that every day, and it's kind of hard to do that. You can't just set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way, typically. But I would say, don't go for cheap services like it says, hey, $50, I'll get you 10 keywords. That it's a marketing scheme. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Probably they're going to either A, take your money, or B, they're going to do it the black hat SEO way, which is I'm just going to keyword spam and I'm going to go off of things, strategies from 10, 15 years ago. And I'm just going to replicate that because it's worked for everyone else that I have. And now I'm no longer with them, but trust me, it's so don't go to Fiverr is my high recommendation there. Never go to Fiverr to be able to find SEO unless the person is say on Fiverr has been doing it for a long time and they are super credible. They have so many testimonials to be able to back them up. Other than that, I would say never go to those types of places. Always try to find an actual marketing agency or an SEO agency to be able to find the people you're looking for. Even then, it can get a little dangerous. So just vet the person, vet the company. Know who you're working with.
Which I do want to, we'll kind of revisit that maybe in a few minutes here as far as some of the red flags that are, a business owner might hear when he's vetting people for an SEO campaign. So we'll touch on that. But I did want to revisit and jump back. We talked about these different strategies and where they're landing. And I think when you talk, I would love to get first question out of the way here. How many times a day or a week does Google change their search engine algorithm?
There's at least 10 updates, minor updates is what we would call them, that are made to the Google search engine's algorithm every single day.
Right.
Minimum of 10.
Minimum.
That's been confirmed by Google,
Right.
you know? So that being the case, those changes are going to happen all the time. So we're always we can't keep up with every single tiny update. So we look to see if anything has changed, but we also look to see what are the core updates, the
I
massive.
guess I should turn my phone off next time.
Just business is happening, you know?
It's fine. We're very busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say we look more at the core updates because those are going to be the ones that are actually going to change the game, right? And that might not affect everyone. It might affect literally everybody across the world, or it could affect just the the US population. So it just depends. But we try to do everything we can to keep up to date with everything that we can keep our eyes on. But I can't be looking at 10 minor updates of, hey, I think that we should actually just change up a name over here and it's just for Google alone. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Which I think, to my follow-up question to that, or point that I want you to elaborate on, is because this is updating so frequently, you need someone who, if they have experience from 10 to 15 years ago, if Google's changing this frequently, eventually that experience is no longer valuable. It's no different than a doctor who's not keeping up with surgical trends or information and adapting to it. So obviously experience is helpful, but more importantly, you want someone who is educating themselves about what Google's doing is in the online community, like I know you are, where you're talking with other professionals and interacting and pushing on Google and gathering information so that you can serve our clients as these updates happen. Now, like you said, we're not going to see huge major updates 10 times a day. Sometimes they're smaller, but obviously it's important to be in on that. So from that perspective, maybe we can tie this into when you're interviewing a marketing company. How would you maybe phrase that question to someone that you're wanting to do your SEO, where it's, tell me about, how you keep yourself educated, or tell me about how SEO changes. Is there any way to frame that question so that you can get a gauge on how involved this person is with how frequently Google is changing?
Yeah, I think to answer that, let's go back to our little apple tree.
Yeah.
Right. So you have an orchard or grove or whatever you want to call it of apple trees, right? You just planted one. So let's say that yours is one out of millions, meaning your website out of millions of other website options out there, right? A whole bunch of things are going to happen in that orchard that you can't do anything about.
Right.
Right? Literally, you cannot. So, there's going to be nests that are built from, birds. There's going to be animals that come through and steal the apples. Like, it's stuff that's going to happen. So we're talking about those minor updates, right? So
Rain, wind, weather.
Yeah, I was going to say, if a hurricane happens to come out of nowhere and wipes down majority of the orchard, but yours is still standing, then that's the whole point of having good SEO, because you did everything you could to protect that tree, right? You put a lot of time and a lot of energy into that. Like that's your baby. That's what you want to continue to grow, have a strong trunk, have strong roots, and you want it to be fruitful at all points that you can, right? Sometimes the apples do fall off, branches fall off, but what ends up happening typically after a massive disaster that you would call, right?
Yep.
Like a hurricane coming through and wiping
A major algorithm update.
a core update,
Yep.
right? Happening. What typically happens is you come back better and stronger because now you just weathered a storm. So now it's going to be prepared for the next time something happens.
Got
Now
some nice
you're
deep
more
roots.
prepared.
Yes.
Right, exactly. So as time continues to tell us when it comes to websites and SEO, it's exactly the same principle as your orchard, as your tree. So I would say that's kind of how, as SEOs, we keep up to date with things. I can't be thinking about this beehive that's over here on someone else's tree. I got to be thinking about what's happening here, and then look around to see what other people are doing to be able to protect their trees as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an important distinction to make too, because I feel, again, from the business owner's perspective, if I put myself in their shoes, or if just from experience I have in working with business owners and communicating with them, is that there sometimes can be that instance where they feel like we've put a lot of work into SEO,
Right.
we're starting to rank, we're seeing the results, all good things, and then they go, hey, we've arrived. Now can we stop? Right? And so what would you kind of say to that person or that business owner that kind of says, okay, now we're on page one, like we can stop this, right?
Congratulations, you got that one apple.
Yeah.
And that's going to feed you for how long?
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you want to be able to have a bushel of apples every time you go out there to your tree.
Yeah.
You want to be able to grab as many as you possibly can and feast on it and continue to have it grow. And again, it comes back to you're always taking care of that tree. Are you just going to let it, are you just going to stop?
Yeah.
You just want to let it just do its thing. Hey, this looks great. Oh, now I got rotting fruit. Crap. Now I got to get back to it.
Yeah.
And now I got to be able to pluck all this off. No, take the ripe fruit when it's there. Be happy with it, right?
Yeah.
And enjoy it for what it is. And hopefully next time around, there will be even better fruit,
Yeah.
right?
Or you gather enough apples to go plant another tree.
That's actually that's a good point. It's typically what you want to do is you want to be able to have the orchard of your own,
Yeah.
right? So that's a whole nother subject.
And
Stick to what you know. Don't go making orange trees if you have an apple tree. You don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be a totally different scenario. But I think if we tie that back to the question, the original question is, you can't just set it and forget it. I said that earlier. You can't set and forget, because what ends up happening is it's not going to produce the fruit that you want eventually, because you have to be looking at, maybe there's a whole bunch of, caterpillars and stuff that are just eating away at everything on here. Maybe there's ants and there's a whole bunch of things that can come into play.
Yeah.
So always be thinking about your SEO strategy at all times, not just one time.
And being prepared for anything that does come across as far as an update or something from Google that does kind of throw a loop in there, and now you have to kind of rework some things.
As a business owner, are you going to be looking at that though?
Yeah.
Are you going to be keeping up to date with Google?
That's why. That's
a problem there. Yeah.
Speaking of hurricanes, there might be a global pandemic that hits, and suddenly your business now has to communicate to people how you're considering their safety.
Yeah.
What different measures you have in place, whether you're open. I mean, these are things for myself as a consumer, as I've been, since March to now. As things have been reopening or hours are changing, not everybody's on top of this. And I can speak from a user standpoint. If I go to their JMB page and it says they're open and I show up and you're not open, or I don't know if you have little check boxes of dine in, carry out. If I don't know, I'm not going to choose your business, because then I'm taking a risk. I might be wasting my time. Whereas if I can see you're updating and you care about me and want to make sure that I have all the information I need to make a decision, I'm going to be more likely to choose you. So there's even things like that where people didn't know how to react. Google made a huge change because they now wanted businesses. There's a sweeping change where almost everybody was temporarily closed at one point, So unexpected hurricanes come up like that as well, where it's not even an algorithm per se. It's
life.
Life.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's SEO as well, is like, we're talking about weathering the storms, but like, anything is possible that happens in SEO, because people might not be searching for the exact same thing 10 years from now. They're going to be doing something else. So are you willing to adapt?
Right.
So for all the listeners out there right now, if you're a business owner or you're planning on getting into business, are you willing to adapt your business to what's going to happen probably 5 to 10 years from now? No one expected COVID-19, the pandemic, to affect us in this way. Some people were thinking, it's only going to stay in China, or it's going to stay in Italy, it's going to be in Europe or Asia. And when it happened it went overseas. No one was really anticipating that. So that was kind of an issue, except the marketing companies saw it coming, because we're prepared for anything that could possibly happen. Right. And you have to be very quick to adapt to things like that. When you feel like it's out of your control, that's the time where you need to get creative. That's the time where you need to start thinking about, what can I be doing to be able to weather this storm as creatively as possible, because people still need to eat, people still need to do stuff. They still need to go places. They still need to experience life, because you can't just be cooped up all the time in your home. Yeah. It doesn't work that way,
Yeah, I think I do want to maybe move into general marketing here in our last little bit. But yeah, there you go.
Not just SEO. All right.
Yeah, I did want to, just to kind of close the chapter on this, as I mentioned before, you have a business owner who's going out and vetting people, maybe marketing companies, to perform SEO work for them. Are there any points or red flags we haven't touched on? Obviously, if they're promising fast results, that's a problem. If they're promising...
Yeah, say... First week, we get you to page 1.
Right.
Don't trust that.
Yeah. Or if they're promising fast results, if they're promising like a cost per keyword, that's very concerning. Is there anything else we've touched on that maybe should be a red flag or should be on top of their mind as a question?
I would say most SEOs are very literate people, right? So that means that they're not going to they're going to do their absolute best to not have typos. They're going to do your best to not, to not mess up visibly, right? And even on the back end of things, but you're not going to really know what's happening on the back end, right? Because that's kind of their world. That's where they do their best, they have their best skills developed, right? At least the best SEOs. So I would say if you're having someone approach you and, I'm sorry, honestly, if they are sounding illiterate, they don't sound like they know what they're really talking about. They just say, you know, it's the whole thing of promising quick results, or it's like, hey, we'll get you 50 keywords is what we're targeting here. You know, it's that whole thing of like, you can't promise me anything. Plus, I can't really trust you because now you don't really sound like you know what you're talking about, because if you have grammatical errors, spelling errors in like your outreach email to me, right? Or even a text message, if that's how they got a hold of you as the business owner, like you can't trust that because they're going either A, they didn't do the research on you, right? They don't know your industry, or B, they can't actually handle the work that you need to push their way. They just can't do it. So that's another thing to think about.
That's super well said. I think for the sake of time, just the closing piece here of just overall marketing. Wow. You are a great source of knowledge for me. I know, especially in website worlds, even ads. You, I think, have a unique ability to put yourself in the mind of users across a variety of industries and ask yourself the question, if I'm going through this website, if I'm going through this experience, am I going to enjoy it? And I think you're great about thinking about the user and adapting, and as they change, you know, we are trying to change our efforts as well. So that's kind of the final overlook here. If you're tying together a website and ads and SEO, I guess the grand question would be, you know, if I'm a business owner, what are some of the best ways I can tune into, you know, the user experience? And obviously you can lean on experts like us, but also as a business owner, what can I do to lean into the user experience and how it's going to be different for my industry or business?
I would say let's start with across the board on a global scale is what you can call it. Websites and digital assets must be mobile first. Yeah. The creative design, the user interface, the navigation really is what it comes down to, must be mobile first. Why? We live in a digital age where mobile is at the forefront. I got a phone in my pocket at all times of the day. When I wake up, I check my phone. When I'm in the bathroom, I check my phone. When I am about to go to bed, I check my phone. I am on my phone at all times, and maybe that's not the healthiest thing to do, but right now we're not really thinking about health because now we're connected to everything. We have the world in our pocket, right? So a lot of people, we've seen it to where it's like 60 to 70% of people are probably going to be more willing to use their phone to be able to access your website rather than their computer, their laptop, unless they're like at work or they brought it with them to a cafe or something like that. Now they're probably going to be off their phone for a majority of the time, but still, even Google thinks mobile first is the importance of the world right now. So everything Google does for trying to essentially what we call crawl, where it sends its algorithm bot out to be able to take a scan of your website, see what it's all about, and then index. So it's that whole librarian thing of like putting the book on the shelf, putting the page in the book, you know, things like that, where it's always going to be, how does this look on mobile, right? So again, globally have a mobile indexed or mobile first viewpoint of everything that you do. Do not be negligent and think, oh, everything has to be optimized for mobile, so now my desktop looks like crap. Don't do that. Your website has to look good at all points. Your app has to look good at all points. Everything has to, for every touch point, for every interface has to look good. And we're even talking about size difference on phones as well. Size difference on your computer. Someone could have a 27-inch screen and it looks horrible on theirs because you have stuff that's misplaced, stuff that's like chaotic. Now I can't find what I'm looking for. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to your competitor that's doing it better than you, right? It's the exact same principle across the board. So I would say that's the first thing you have to keep in mind when you're building out a website or you're thinking about the user experience, right? Next thing is we're talking about navigation on the website itself. Your menu you have to be able to find it. The user has to be able to find it. Sometimes it's really strange because I'm trying to get somewhere on someone's website and it hasn't been developed super well. Everything else looks beautiful. But if I can't find what I'm searching for on your website, the whole reason why I was there, you can have great SEO. Everything runs so beautifully. But then your SEO personnel messed up. They didn't talk to you about how your website is complete and utter crap in the navigation section, right? That's a red flag. If you want to be talking about red flags, if they're not talking about how your website needs to be fixed, because every website technically needs to be fixed at some point, that's a huge issue. Websites always need to be fixed. They always need to be updated. Yeah. So a new computer comes out, a new software comes out, browsers do new updates. It looks weird. It looks different. And now you have to be able to optimize for the new user. So that means changing things up for the better user experience. So I'd say that super important to be able to have everything findable. And do it in a way where it makes sense, right? If I have a services tab in my drop box down below, right? My drop down menu for that as a user, I hover over services or I click the services. Great, I'm going where I'm going. And it says, contact us. Well, okay, I'm looking for your services. I'm not interested in contacting you right now. So understand what your user's actually searching for. You know, if an ad we'll go into ads for a moment then. If ads point someone to what we call a landing page, so the page that user ends up on once they click the link, right? And it takes you to something that's totally different than what you were expecting, well, that kind of sucks. Now I have to go find either A, I'm going to go find what I'm looking for, or B, I'm bouncing. I'm leaving the page. I'm not interacting with anything. If upfront, and this is what we call above the fold, so I'm kind of going over everything here. You opened up a can of worms here.
This was the last question. Here's the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So essentially, what you want is for everything to make sense for the user in the end, right? I don't want my user to bounce. I want my user to be engaged with what's on there, whether that's giving me a phone call, whether that's driving up to my storefront, or whether that's actually just emailing me, contacting me, you know? And also, it depends on what the user is searching for, you know, is how you put your call to actions, right? So a call to action is like a button or, contact us today or a form field or something like that. So your call to action has to be appropriate, right? So if you're a grocery store, right? So heading back to that, if you're a grocery store, what do you want more? What is your key intent here? What is going to be successful for you? I probably want people coming to my store, right? So direction requests. Here's how to find us. Make that upfront. You don't want people to call you. Then it's wasting your company's time to answer the question of how do I find you guys? Where are you located? That's a waste. So now you need to make it upfront. Hey, here's a map. Here's the directions button. Make it accessible on mobile. We discussed that. Make it really easy of just a couple clicks to be able to get to where they're going. You don't want to have tons of clicks to be able to find what they're looking for. You don't want them to call you. Just be able to answer a simple question like, we're open during COVID-19 or we're closed. Now it's bad user experience. And now they're able to leave a review of how horrible their experience with you was, if they want to, right? So that's kind of what we think about for every single thing in digital marketing is when the user gets to that point, because it's one thing to lead a horse to water. It's another thing to be able to actually have them drink, right? So we try to be able to make it as easy as possible for that horse to be able to drink. So we'll say users are not horses, unfortunately. But yeah, it essentially works the same way. I'm going to lead you here because I knew what you wanted, but now I have to make it to where this is everything you ever wanted and more. Now you're going to be coming back to me, right? Because I have a unique value to you. You like the first experience with us. We made everything super easy for you, very accessible, and our team does a really great job of making that happen for our websites when our web developers are building that out. Yeah. It's a super easy interface for people, you know? And experience is beautiful. It's wonderful. I can find the product I want. I can find the service I want. I can find the directions, how to be able to call you. So think about what the real intent comes down to from beginning to end. Don't leave it open-ended, because now it's a problem for me and you probably just lost out on a whole bunch of business, right?
Yeah.
So always be thinking about that.
Yeah, that was great. I think that was exactly what I was hoping you would touch on, is start to finish. And that grocery example is so perfect, as far as you really don't want people on the phone. You want to get them to your store. You want to show them how your layout or what your products are and how it makes it different. So yeah, unfortunately, there's so much more I wish we could dive into and unpack. I want to make sure we're not going on. And yeah, I think we're definitely going to have you on in the near future again to unpack more of this. But I feel great about how you broke SEO down and why it's important and why to invest in it. And I hope our listeners out there got some tangible pieces, even though it is a very complex world.
SEO is good for you.
Yeah.
It's healthy.
You got to plant that
Take
apple
it every
tree.
day.
Yeah, got to plant the apple tree. Justin, any closing thoughts before we sign off here?
No, I think it was a good breakdown. And I feel like we could have an SEO hour like every week that we just kind of like, so we might need to start doing that. But yeah, if there's any questions or anything, like that's what we're here for people to call us and ask us, and hopefully we can be a point of resource for people to just really understand this. It can be a scary term, it seems like. When people hear about SEO, it's confusing, and it just seems like it's something that people don't understand, so they just want to shove it in the closet and forget about it. But you're doing your business a disservice if that's the way you're thinking about it. You have to be on the forefront of this.
Absolutely.
And I think it's more important today than it ever has been, and it's not too late.
No,
Right.
it's never too late. But the thing is, you should have started yesterday.
Well, yeah.
So don't put it off to tomorrow.
Yes.
Right.
Start your SEO campaign yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? So that way you can be ahead of your competition, because odds are, hopefully, they're not doing SEO. And if they are, you're already behind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you need to do the catch up by hiring an expert in the field that knows what they're doing and knows the strategies that are particular for you that will make you successful, because it's not copy and paste. Not everything works for everybody.
Yep.
So you have to be very particular.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down.
Well, yeah, Joseph, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your knowledge. Like Justin said, we might have to look into an SEO hour. Or, yeah, whatever.
I'd be
it is,
down
but
for that.
there
That'd
you
be
go.
fun.
5-minute
I can ask
update
you
every
guys
week.
questions this time of what you know about SEO.
That's right. There you go.
Do a pop
us.
quiz.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining, and everyone out there, we hope you got your, multiple pieces of value, or at least one along the way. And like Justin said, we're always here as a resource. So thank you for stopping by. Thanks for listening.